Okay, so that's 5 p.m. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Thanks, Sally. Right, so firstly, welcome everybody. Thank you very much for registering to our tax and legal update for Expatriates webinar. So I got a few people joining slightly late, so I'm just gonna make sure they can join us as well. That's fine. Sorry about that. So this webinar is hosted by myself, John Dikin, Sally Myburgh, and Javier Rueda Ruiz. Unfortunately, Phil Pick from CP Group cannot join us today due to an unexpected personal issue. So he has arranged for his colleague Javier to take his place. Javier is an experienced lawyer based in Malaga. He's helping his clients with everything they need to do to set up their new life in Spain, including visa and residency permits. Sally is a co-administrator of a Facebook group for expatriates. Her group is called After Brexit in Spain, and she has helped over 24,000 members over the years, which include both people who already live in Spain and looking to move down. I am a private wealth manager at Chase Buchanan. I help expatriates with financial planning and advise them what actions to take to make sure their pensions and investments are tax efficient here in Spain. And I would also like to offer everyone who has registered to receive a complimentary financial review. So please get in touch if you'd like to benefit from this. Sorry, a few people joined late. I'm just gonna make sure they are admitted. 1 second. Right, sorry about that. We would welcome any questions during or after the event. If you have any questions during the event, then please write them in the chat box and we will discuss them in the end. At the end of this webinar, you'll see our contact details. So if you do have any questions which you wish to discuss with us on an individual basis, please get in touch with us after the event. Right, so let's kick off. So I'm gonna start with the first topic to discuss, which is Spanish visa options. So over to you, Sally.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, jolly good. I'm going to concentrate on the visa residency, not the old withdrawal protected residencies, because the parameters are slightly different. And anyway, the time has passed to join with WA protection. So this is specifically about the visas that are available now. I'm also going to point out one or two things that people don't always realise about these visas as I go along, particularly starting with the first one, which is the most popular one that we're asked about, which is the non-lucrative visa. It's also sometimes called the non-working visa. It actually is on some of the consulate sites as that, or the retirement visa is its nickname. It has a reasonable passive income requirement. It is for people who don't work anymore. Your income would come from pensions, from investments. It might come from rental, but if it comes from rental properties, they have to be handled by a management company. And the first person that applies has to have 28,800 euros per year income. And for every other person that joins has to be 7,200. So for a couple, for example, it's 36,000 euros. That's quite a commitment if you're retired, unless you've got investments. But it can be topped up by savings if you want to. That you can just present savings, but they're not going to let you have it if all you're presenting is 28,800 savings, because at the end of year 1, you have to renew for year 2 and 3. And at the end of year 3, you have to renew for year 4 and 5. The income requirement doesn't change, well, unless they put it up, which probably will at some stage. But what does change is the savings. You would have to then show double the savings to do it. You will also have to have private health insurance. And this is the same with all of the visas. The private health insurance has to be the equivalent of the Spanish national health system. So it is no co-payments. In other words, you're not required to pay half of a treatment. And there are no exceptions. If they exclude something that you have, then you're not going to get that. Well, the health insurance is not going to qualify. Okay, and that is the same with all of them. But if you're retired, you can use your S1. If you've got state retirement, you will have the S1. It is then your health is then paid for by the UK government in Spain, and that's fine. And you are a full member of the Social Security. If you go the private health route and it becomes very expensive because of some pre-existing condition, then in fact you can apply after you've been a resident for a year for the Convenio Especial. And that is where you literally buy into the Spanish health system. You buy in with £60, 60 euros a month till you're 65, and then it's 157 euros. It's not actually that cheap when you're older, but there are no exemptions, and it qualifies for the renewals. Okay. If you own property in Spain because you've brought property to retire to, I'm afraid it counts for virtually nothing on this visa. If you're borderline with income, yeah, they might allow it, but otherwise, I'm afraid having property doesn't really mean anything. But it does give you what's called temporary residency. It's actually the temporary right to residency. It's like a probationary period for your residency, and it lasts for 5 years. And all the visas are like this that lead to permanent residency. After 5 years, you really don't have to prove anything, not financially or anything else. You don't even have to keep up your health care. In fact, you're entitled to join the Spanish social security system. They don't like you to do it, and you have to argue a bit, but that is the law. But for the first 5 years, providing you are not out of Spain for more than 10 months in total, or 6 months in one go, then you pass to permanent residency. And you are entitled to change your TIE, your Tarjeta de Identidad de Residencia de Extranjera, for a permanent stating one. Okay. That's pretty well the same with all of the visas. And the next one that we quite often get asked about is the golden visa. The golden visa is actually the nickname for the property part of the investor's visa. To qualify for it, you have to buy a house or have bought a house since 2014 for a minimum of 500,000 euros unfinanced. Okay, that has to be just the purchase cost. It doesn't have to be a residential property. It can be several properties. It can be business property, investment property, but it has to have been worth 500. Well, you have to have paid 500,000 minimum for it. Okay, it is one of the visas that comes from the UGE. The UGE is the Unidad de Grandes Empresas. It's the department in Madrid that really deals with, if you like, more the business and investment visas. To maintain it, you don't have to be in Spain for any particular length of time. But if you want it to transfer to permanent residency after 5 years, you have to follow the 10 months in 5 years, no more than 6 months in one go. Which is a bit steep, probably, if you're going on the golden visa. But you can bring your children, you can bring your parents, you can bring your in-laws. With all of these visas, you can bring your dependent children, and the definition of that is children who are minors, children who are in full-time education, or children who are dependent through disability. Right. Apart from the golden visa, which may be revised at some stage, there is talk about scrapping it. That's not actually going on in Parliament at the moment, but it probably will be raised because the 500,000 limit, in fact, has been there since 2014. Well, October 2013 actually is when the law came in. So it probably will be revised at some stage. The beauty of that is that you and all the people you bring with you can work. So it's a useful visa. You can come and go as you like. There's no limit of time that you need to be in Spain to maintain it. You just have to go on proving what you paid for your house. And it has to be reviewed every 2 years. A very useful visa, is the study visa. Sorry, excuse me. Right, sorry, that's just typical, isn't it? It's the study visa. The study visa is for students of any age group that want to come to Spain and want to study for longer than 3 months. Up to 3 months, you don't need a visa. Over 3 months, you have a visa. If you study for long enough, up to master's or degree level or something equivalent, you can then transfer it to a work visa, and you won't need a working permit from the people that are going to employ you. But you have to do a job that is within the field that you were studying. And it has to be a college that's accredited for this, and it has to be a course that, again, is accredited for this. You can bring family members, but they can't work. But the actual income threshold is very low. It's 600 a month for the student, 450 for the first person that comes with them, and 300 for the second person. So it's a lot lower than the non-lucrative visa. The golden visa, I should have said, also has the same requirement as the non-lucrative visa, 28,800 plus 7.2 for everybody who comes. So this is a much more modest visa in terms of financial commitment. And it could be quite useful for older children who don't qualify as, a dependent child, but who want to come to Spain to be near their parents if they're willing to study. A visa that, of course, comes up all the time is the digital nomad visa. This is a brand new, sorry about that. This is a brand new visa. It is for people who work in the telecommunications field or on computers. It's not an easy visa to get. I think we all thought it would be great for young people to come and sit on their laptops on the beach and enjoy themselves. And it is like that in some countries. It's not like that in Spain. It has been sort of tacked onto the startup law, and for the startup companies and entrepreneurs, you have to have, the first person has to have a projected income of just over 30,000 euros. So it's substantial. And the second family member, just over 11,000 euros. That's actually 41,580 a couple, or about 35,000 pounds income. So it is fairly stiff. If you are freelance, you cannot opt for the tax advantage, which I know Javier is going to talk about in a minute, which is the Beckham's law. If you're employed, you can opt for that, but you don't have to. In our calculation, unless you are earning 50 to 60,000 a year, it's probably not an advantage. But if you are freelance, then you have to register as autonomo. And as autonomo, of course, you get the benefits of being a worker in Spain with the social security and everything else. It can be applied for in the UK, which you get a 1-year visa, which you then renew towards the end for the 3-year permit, or it can be applied for through the UGE, the Unidad de Grandes Empresas in Madrid. It's actually applied for online. So, but it's not an easy one to get. But what, if you do genuinely work remotely, if you're either very highly qualified or you can prove you have 3 years experience, then it is a visa that's worth looking at. With all of these visas, you would also need an ACRO. In England, in other countries, it's something else. But the ACRO is the police criminal record, and it has to be the ACRO, nothing else. There are various other visas, which we talk about, like the autonomo visa, where you literally apply to come to Spain to work autonomously for for yourself, self-employed. You have to provide, if you come on that visa, it has to be applied for in England first off, and you have to provide a watertight business plan. And it is not assessed by the functionary in the consulate, it's assessed by business advisors. So that isn't so easy to get. But if you buy an existing business in Spain that already has a record, then that is actually much easier to prove. But the other main employment visa, of course, is to come to Spain to be employed, and that's fine. But your employer has to provide you with a work permit, and that's where the problem lies with the employed visa. The work permit, they can only get it if they can prove that there are no other candidates in Spain who are either on WA protected residency, or they're Spanish nationals, or they're EU citizens. And there is an 8-day rule. If they advertise it for 8 days and they don't get any response, then that's also a justification. But they have to be able to prove that they need to employ a foreigner. And so anything that's in the construction industry, that's in the property maintenance industry, hairdressing, beauty, hospitality, those jobs are well filled by people who are already here. It's extremely difficult. But if you do a job that's quite unusual, then that's probably a very good way to go. There are, I'll just very quickly say, there are a few other visas. There's the family reunification, where you can bring dependent members of your family over if you've already been resident for a year. There are other work visas that don't require a permit, but they're usually for exchange jobs for religious clerics, or teaching exchange jobs. And there is also the intercompany transfer visa, which your company would organise if they have a branch in Spain. And there's the highly qualified visa. Again, those are from the UGE. Right, I think I've probably exhausted myself. And I'll hand back to you, John.
Thanks, Ali. That was really useful. I know it's a very large topic you had, so I appreciate it. You run it through really well. Thanks for doing that. And this leads in really nicely to Javier's part. So he's going to talk us through the Beckham Tax Regime, which is linked to the digital nomad visa. So Javier, over to you.
Hello, thank you. I hope that I'm listening, that my voice is clear and loud.
Yes.
Okay. Well, one of the issues of becoming a resident in Spain, as Ali was explaining, is that after a 6-month period here, you will be taxable in Spain. You will become a tax resident. Okay. Well, Spanish tax agency is kind of greedy in terms of taxes, because it's one of those countries in which you have to declare for the amounts or whatever incomes you have in Spain, plus everything you have worldwide. There are some ways of reducing that taxation, and one of those is the Beckham law. Okay, it was named after the football player was playing in Real Madrid, and it allows a person, someone who became tax resident in Spain, to have a reduced taxation comparable to a non-resident citizen. Okay, it has some requirements that will have to be proved by the person who applies for it. And it has a period of maximum period in which you can use it. Okay, the requirements basically is first of all, you have to prove that you haven't been tax resident in Spain for the past 5 years, for the past 5 tax periods. Okay, proving this, you must prove that you have either a working contract with a Spanish company with a minimum conditions. Well, it's not like a temporal contract. You must prove that you have a long-term contract with a Spanish company, or you can also apply when you are a member of a company that you own less than 25% of the shares of that company. Okay, you can use that tax regime for a maximum of 5 tax periods, and it allows you obviously to get a reduced taxation. How? Basically, you will be taxed for your Spanish incomes at a maximum of a 24% tax rate, up to 600,000 euros. And so that part will have really a huge benefit in terms of taxes compared to a standard tax resident in Spain. Okay, above those 600,000 euros, you will be taxed at a 47%, which is kind of close to the maximum, which is another tax resident in Spain tax. So it clearly benefits the person who just moved for the first time to Spain, helping to reduce taxation for a big number of years. There is something to really keep in mind, which is that you have a maximum period to apply for it, because you don't have to apply. I mean, it's just an option, but most of the cases is a very interesting option. You have a time frame to apply for it of 6 months since your activity started in Spain. So it's something that we suggest our clients to plan in advance before moving to Spain, and to do it properly, because obviously losing that time frame will mean that you will be considered as a general tax resident, and you will be paying general tax. Okay, there are other reductions in terms of other source of incomes in Spain, like the savings and something like this that will be taxed 19 to 28 depending on the amount. And the good thing is that you live outside any other thing that comes or is generated outside of Spain. That's the other good part of it. You don't even have to submit information about the 720 tax form, and you don't have to pay taxes in Spain for other source of incomes that you have outside of Spain. So it clearly benefits who applies, who requests. The formalities are, well, to prove your identity, to prove the country that you are tax resident in, to prove the working relation or that you own a company with less than 25% shares on it, and to register in the Social Security yourself, either as a self-employed or either as a regular worker. It means that by that time you will also need to have a residency approved in Spain, because this is just a tax regime. It's not a residency program or residency right, okay? And that's mainly it. It is also connected with the nomad's visa, because as a nomad visa holder, you can request, if you are entitled to do it, this tax system, this tax regime, this Beckham tax regime. So basically, that's a resume of the Beckham tax regime.
Thank you, Javier. Right, so let's move on to the next topic, which I'm going to discuss, which is, let me bring up the slide. Right, wealth and solidarity tax. So this is something that's creating a lot of confusion lately. So I'm going to talk you through that. So some people may have heard that wealth tax has been abolished in some regions in Spain. There's a new tax called solidarity tax. What is this all about? So I'll talk you through this. It gets a bit complex because you have 17 different tax regions in Spain with autonomous tax rules. But basically what it is that wealth tax is a charge payable by Spanish residents should their total net worldwide assets exceeding the allowances available, calculated on the 31st of December each year, exceed allowances. So national rates apply, but the total tax liability varies between different autonomous regions as they have their own rules and exemptions. So following abolishment in Madrid a few years earlier, Andalusia and Murcia effectively eliminated the wealth tax in late 2022. However, so these are regions that are governed by the right-wing populist party, and the central government in Madrid, which is a socialist government still. Let's see what happens now after the election, if there's some kind of agreement. But as of last year, the socialist government didn't like that some regions abolished the wealth tax. So they introduced very quickly a new solidarity tax, which applies at higher thresholds. And it applies in all regions at total net wealth above 3 million euros. So each resident has a tax-free personal allowance of 700,000 euros and an allowance of up to 300,000 against the value of the Spanish main home. So effectively, if you live in Madrid, Andalusia, or Murcia, you will only be taxed on your wealth if you have net assets exceeding 3.7 million euros. In other regions where wealth tax still applies, the general personal allowance is 700,000 for wealth tax. However, in other regions, such as Comunidad Valenciana, which is Alicante, for example, it's only 500,000. So as the wealth tax and solidarity tax overlap in some regions where wealth tax still exists, you'll receive credit for any wealth tax paid on your solidarity tax return. So a professional financial advisor can estimate the wealth tax and solidarity tax liabilities before you move to Spain, so that you can prepare and plan ahead, as there are ways to reduce these taxes. Hopefully that was clear. So I'm going to move on to the next topic, which is the UK budget impact on large UK pension pots. So this is a topic that I think is interesting, especially for people that have large pension pots in the UK and they live in Spain or they are considering moving down to Spain. In a few months ago, a new budget was introduced in the UK, which introduced some changes to pensions legislation. And one of the main changes was that the UK budget effectively abolished the pension lifetime allowance from April 6th, 2023. So I get lots of questions from clients or prospect clients, like they ask me, is it best to just leave my pension in the UK? Because previously, benefit crystallization events, such as transferring your pension abroad, would trigger the lifetime allowance charge, which was generally a tax of 25% when the pension pot was worth at least £1,073,100. Now, if you have a pot of about, let's say an example, £2 million, with the previous legislation, you would have paid a UK tax bill of about £231,725 on a transfer abroad. Now, following the new rules introduced with the budget, what's best for you and the pension funds depends on many factors, and you would need advice since it's a complex area of financial planning. An analysis of your specific pension will be the first step. But there is a window of opportunity for individuals that are considering transferring the pension out of the UK, because Labour have stated that they would reintroduce the LTA, the lifetime allowance charge, if they, or the lifetime allowance limit, sorry, if they gained power. So there are individuals in this position who are transferring the pension out of the UK whilst there is no lifetime allowance charge to take advantage of this opportunity while the window is still open. Right, hopefully that was clear. So I'm going to move on to the next topic, which is Modelo 720. So it's over to you, Javier.
Okay, thank you. Well, the tax form 720 is another of those kind of obligations that will have to be followed by whoever became tax resident in Spain for the first time. There are different ways of becoming tax resident in Spain. The most common one is to be more than 183 days in Spain during a calendar year. We have to remember that the Spanish tax system goes from the 1st of January to the 31st of December of the same year. So it's 100% calendar year. So if you stay longer than 183 days, tax agency might consider that you are tax resident. There are other ways of becoming tax resident, even being less than this amount of days. Okay, but they are more complex, and we'll have to explain in another time. Okay, basically, once that you became tax resident in Spain, you will have to submit taxes in the next month of June. Let's say that we are talking about 2023. You will have to submit the tax returns in June 2024. This tax form will be related to 2023, always the year before. It happens in May, June, but before this happens, there is a time that has to be really keep in mind, which is March of the 2024 in this case. The first time that you have to submit something related with your taxes in Spain will be the March with the model 720. You will not pay anything here, but you will have to submit information about any existing asset anywhere in the world outside of Spain. Okay, there are three different categories on that tax form. The first one is bank accounts. The second one is properties. The third one is stocks or shares in companies. Any of those categories that you have more than 50,000 euros on each one of them, either combining accounts, either being member of an account which is a shared account and has more than that balance, you have to submit information. as explained, you don't have to pay taxes there, but that information will be used in June by the Spanish tax agency to review the taxes that you will submit. As mentioned, the obligation starts after the first year that you became tax resident, and you will only have to change or submit in another year that tax form if you sell any of the existing assets listed on any of the categories, or you close a bank account, or you sell property or shares, okay? Or if you increase in more than 20,000 euros, any of those existing categories, because you earn, you have more savings, because you have, your stocks have changed the value or whatever, okay? It used to be really, really important to submit all the information, and it still is, okay, with detail. In the past, avoiding to submit this tax or even forgetting about this was bringing a huge sanction from the Spanish tax agency. This sanction procedure was abolished by the European Union, and now is a more flexible sanction regime. But at the very end, you really have to submit, because there will be, it will be really complicated to move money from outside of Spain to Spain if you haven't declared that you are owning either properties, stocks, or bank accounts outside of Spain. It will be, you know, they will ask a lot of questions. And this is basically the main obligations from the 720 tax form.
Right, thank you, Javier. So let's move on to the final topic with Sally. She's gonna talk us through driving license, which is a hot topic. It's been for a while now. I'm a member of her Facebook group. I see people ask about this all the time. So Sally, please tell her, what's the latest news on the driving license for people that live here and come from the UK?
Right. Well, we all waited a very long time, and some of us weren't actually convinced that they would bring exchange back, but they did, and thank goodness they did. The thing that people don't often understand is this 6-month window that's given, which is 6 months. Once you have your residency, you have 6 months from the start date of your residency to continue to drive on your UK license and exchange to a Spanish license. But the actual period of time of which you can exchange your Spanish license isn't limited. You can let the 6 months expire. You can no longer drive on your UK license, but you actually permanently have the right to exchange it for a Spanish one. Well, that's typical, isn't it, to start coughing as soon as I start talking. Right. If you came to Spain and got your residency between the 1st of January 21 and the 16th of March this year, you have until the 16th of September to continue to drive on your British license. In the intervening period of time, of course, you weren't able to drive. But you can exchange your license even if it expired during that time, or even if you renewed it slightly fraudulently in England, because once you're resident in Spain, you're not allowed to renew your license in England. You can maintain it, but you cannot renew it. But some people did because they didn't know what else to do and they needed to keep their license, their UK license, valid. Those people do seem to be being allowed to exchange as well. It wasn't clear at the time during the negotiation whether that would be the case, but it seems to be. You have to get a DVLA code. Providing you can get that code, they seem to be quite happy to exchange the license, even for 1 or 2 members that we've had who really have been out of the parameters, like they could have exchanged before, but they didn't. But if you've got the DVLA code, it is worth trying to exchange, and the chances are you will be able to. That is for UK and Northern Ireland licenses. Gibraltar licenses don't need the DVLA code. When you make an appointment with a DGT, you make it through Transmite de Oficina, not Canje. Normally, before, everyone used the Canje button on the internet, but it doesn't include the United Kingdom. You have to use Tramite de Oficina, okay? And you have to take a medical test. There are loads of medical centres all around Spain. the further away they are from the DGT office, the cheaper they are. Everybody's locality has them. They're quite clearly marked. They are for the medical, for shotguns, for dangerous dogs, and for driving. They do it all. And it's a very simple test. They test your eyesight. It's usually just the board with read the line of numbers, of letters. But it does help, of course, if you can pronounce the Spanish, the alphabet in the Spanish way, and you should try and do that before you go. They then ask you health questions, and they then give you a coordination test, which is like one of the old Snoopy tennis tests. You get 2 lines, and you have to keep the middle line going in between it. And it's actually quite tricky to do, but you get lots of attempts at it, and they don't expect you to do it perfectly. So it's really easy, and it's not anything that anyone should be daunted by. A lot of our members say, oh, we're a bit of no, it's really simple, and it's really very, very easy to do. You then take the test certificate, you take your TIE, you have to have your foreigner's identity card, which comes with your residency. You take your passport, you take your old license, you take your application form, and you take a photograph, which has to be 32 by 26 millimeters. It's smaller than our UK passport photographs, but it's the same for all the documentation here. And it costs just under 30 euros. It's about 28 euros something or other. If you're doing groups A and B, which are the motorbikes and the cars. If you do the commercial categories, which are commercial C, then in fact it's a test group 2. It's a longer medical test, and it's 90 odd euros. But most people just want to be able to drive their car or their motorbike. Make sure before you go that you identify all the categories on your license and you know what the equivalent numbers are in Spanish. Because, for example, when I did mine, and I did mine about 8 years ago, I went to the DGT and they said, but they've only put for a car, not a car and a trailer. I have 7 horses. I need to tow a trailer. So they maybe go back and have that put on. So identify exactly what you're entitled to and what you want to keep. It's renewed every 10 years. But if you're doing an exchange and you're over 60, you get it for 5 years, I think. No, I think you get it up to 70. And once you're over 65, you get it for 5 years. Okay. And if you lose your license and therefore don't have it to exchange, then you need from the DVLA, as well as the code, you need to get something called a certificate of entitlement. And then you can exchange that if you physically don't have access to your license. And I think that's probably all I need to say.
Thank you so much, Sally. You're a wealth of knowledge, as always. I can see that in the Facebook group as well. So many questions are answered very, very thoroughly by yourself and by your colleague Rachel. Yeah, right. So right, this takes us to the end where we're gonna. Well, first of all, thanks to both Sally and Javier, and thanks to everyone who are watching. Before we finish, I'd like us to look at the questions in the chat. So Sally, there's only one question linked to yourself, and Javier, I'm sorry about all the other questions that link to what you discussed. So hope you don't mind. We got a few questions for you in the chat. So let's look at them. So we got the first question is from James, who's American, holding a Mexican passport. He's asking if he can naturalize in Spain after 2 years of residence, and will he then have access to Spanish public health care? I wonder, Sally, is that a question that you could perhaps answer or not?
Well, it's well out of our remit because we don't really deal with Spanish Mexican citizenship. But yes, I did have to look at this the other day. There are certain South American companies, of which I believe Mexico is one, which, yes, only need to be legally resident for 2 years, and then they can apply for Spanish citizenship. For the rest of us, of course, it's 10 years. There are certain other exceptions as well, but UK residents, 10 years, you can apply for citizenship. But yes, Mexico is 2.
Thank you, Sally. Right, so we got lots of questions on the Beckham law. So Javier, I don't know if you can see the chat, but we got questions from Chantal, Sari, Joanne, and Peter. Would you be happy to just pick some of these questions and give your opinion on them. Yeah.
I will go through them. Well, the first question of how many years you must be or not tax resident in Spain to be able of requesting the Beckham tax regime, you have to prove that you have not been a tax resident in Spain for at least the past 5 years. So I think that this explains or replies the question. You must prove that you have not been a tax resident in Spain. It's kind of a new regime for new residents, okay? Then you apply for digital nomad visas. Yes, the digital nomad visas, you can, in some cases, use the Beckham tax regime. It's a little bit more complex and you have to really see the kind of relation, but yes, you can use it. Same requirements. You have to prove that during the past 5 years, you have not been registered here. Sally is asking something?
I'll say it's worded slightly odd. Could you not qualify for Beckham's law? You don't have to apply for Beckham's law if you have the digital
That's
nomad.
it.
It's optional.
That's it. It's different from the residency. It's a tax regime that you can choose and you can use or not. Okay. Then what happens if you, Joanne asks, what happens if you leave your job under the Beckham regime? Well, this has been highly discussed. Okay. We have to make a difference on leaving like voluntarily your job or losing your job, being fired, or losing the category of administrator of a company. If it's you who does, it might be a problem, okay? Because one of the requirements is that you have to keep your work. But if you're fired and you find a new job in terms of a short period of time, there are Spanish tax resolutions that confirms that you will keep the status, you will keep the tax regime, and you will not lose it, okay? But it's different leaving leaving the work by yourself than being fired or leaving the work to change for another company because you have a better offer. That also entitles you to keep on using the tax regime. Okay, so it's kind of that's the difference. If you do it and you don't work any longer, or if you change the work, or you are fired for a short period of time. Then they ask also what happens with the 720. You don't have to submit 720 when you are under the Beckham tax regime. You don't have to do it, okay? Then someone asked Peter about rental incomes from properties.
I can do that one if you like. Yeah, there's a question from Chantal. She asks, when do you know if you qualify or not for Beckham?
When do you know? I'm lost. The procedure is easy. You first of all need to know if you follow the requirements, which is to move for the first time to Spain, or to move and not being tax resident for the five past years, to have a permanent work or a working contract in Spain, okay, or to get a nomad visa approved. And at that time you have 6 months to submit the application. The application normally must be replied, but the tax agency simply doesn't do it. So if after a period of 3 months you don't get the reply, your status is confirmed by silencio negativo, which we call in Spanish law, which is that basically the administration has a short period of time to confirm something that you asked to them, and if they don't do, it is automatically approved. Is this what she was asking for?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, thank you so much, Javier. Right. So the question from Peter. So Peter is asking. He says his gestor says he does not need to declare income from his rental property in the UK, as the funds remain in the UK. Is that correct? So I would say no, that's not correct at all. So if you are a Spanish resident with a UK property, then you will be liable for tax on that rental income in both Spain and the UK. So UK rental income will be liable to tax in the UK because that's where the property is physically situated. You'll also be subject to tax in Spain because you're a Spanish resident, and in Spain you're liable to pay tax on your worldwide income and gains. However, there is a double taxation treaty in place between Spain and the UK, which ensures you don't pay the same tax twice. So what happens is any tax already paid in the UK will be credited against any tax liability due in Spain. So you're subject to income tax in both jurisdictions of the UK and Spain. Now, you should remember to also declare the UK property on the Modelo 720, which Javier discussed earlier, in Spain, because it's an overseas asset reporting declaration, which is due at the end of March each year. I can see there's also a question from Robin, who's got a UK police pension, asking if it's worth considering transferring to Curops. So normally when you transfer pensions, it will be personal pensions you'll look at that are accessible. So a police pension, I don't think you would normally transfer, but it's something that's worth reviewing. So you know, we would need to look at the specific type of pension, but in principle, I don't think that's normally not a good idea to do. Other questions? One, Shirley's asking, are UK pension pots included when calculating wealth taxes? So normally pensions in the UK would not be included when you assess your wealth tax liability in Spain. And I think that's probably all the questions. If anyone's got any other questions, then please write them right now and we'll respond. Otherwise, if you know, normally with these kind of events, people don't want to ask questions in public, but they prefer to just approach us individually afterwards because it's something very personal. So we are available to help you after this event with any questions you may have, which are linked to your particular situation. Sally, just before we finish, please could you tell us more about your Facebook group and how can you help people who join your group?
Right, yes, okay, with pleasure. The group was started 5 years ago. It was originally Brexit in Spain, and it was an anti-Brexit site. But as soon as Brexit happened, we sort of turned it into an advice site on all issues of coming to Spain, traveling to Spain, living in Spain, all sorts of things. Sometimes we have a bit of fun, but mostly it is to do with imparting information as much as we can. It's public. Rachel and I and our two moderators, Jackie and Helen, we are volunteers. So everything we use is from official sources, but there are no charges, no donations asked for, nothing. It's a public site. You come on, you look up under our navigation tab for anything that you want to know about coming to Spain. If you'd like to ask questions, if you'd like to make comments, then you need participation approval. No problem at all. And we would be very happy to answer anything that we can if it's within our remit. If we don't know the answer, we usually find it out for you. And everybody is welcome. Absolutely.
Thank you, Sally. Javier, could you please tell us more about how you can help expatriates in Spain?
Okay, well, we are a small law firm based in Malaga, or medium-sized law firm based in Malaga City, although we have also offices in Marbella and Benalmádena. And well, we provide services to mostly foreign clients, a lot of them from England, from UK, and all other countries, like 85% English-spoken clients. We help with everything: taxation, residency permissions, civil law, everything except criminal law. I will be pleased to reply whatever question is forward to me. And thank you so much for inviting me and letting me help you out, trying to clear out doubts about these topics.
You're welcome, Javier, and thanks for joining us. So we hope that this information was interesting or useful to everyone. And if you have any questions or would like us to help you, or if you'd like to benefit from a complimentary financial review with myself, then please just make contact with us. You will find our details on the screen, and everyone who registered will soon receive an email with our contact details and the link of this recording of the webinar, which you can, if you want to, send on to friends when you want to know that you think would benefit from seeing this. So yeah, thanks again to Sally, Javier, and everyone that's dialed in. We hope to hear back from you soon. Thanks again.
You're welcome. Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.